Okay, rulers, settle down. Ruler School is brought to you by Odyssey Games, where you can go to get singles for all your Force of Will and other trading card games, as well as these amazing patrons. Special thanks to guest lecturer member Vite Ramen. Thank you for your support. Class is in session. Hey there, rulers! Welcome back after a long week of Force of Will to the Office Hours, your favorite ever live Force of Will vodcast, featuring Oops, all bad guys, but also featuring today a special guest. Please welcome back Ryan Miles.
Wait a minute. You brought me here for the Oops All Bad Guys episode. Am I a bad guy?
No,
Am I like
no.
the villain of Force of Will? Is that what that means? I see what's going on.
Okay.
You are the villain of Force of Will.
There you go. We're also joined, as always, by Paul Reisman.
Hey.
And Mike Rance.
I'm not Ryan Miles.
It's true.
I'm actually just Ryan Miles in a different clown suit.
Impressive work, Ryan.
Before we get started, a different clown suit. Am I already wearing a clown suit, and that you're specifically
Yes.
a different clown? All right.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh boy, tight
Both
ship around here,
clowns, dude.
Jeremy.
Yeah, it's tight ship. Welcome to my hell. So before we get started tonight, I do want to say again, if you haven't already seen, the Odyssey Games does have pre-orders up for the 7th. You can click the link in the description below to get those pre-orders. They have boxes as well as pre-release kits still available, and I will say that they have been able to get more boxes than last time because of you all doing so many good pre-orders and sales post set release. So the more you can send traffic their way and pay them, the more product they will be able to get even into the future. So go check them out. If you like what we're doing, you want to consider supporting us, consider clicking that join button down below to join as a student here at Ruler School. You get access to the emotes, you get access to the badges, you help us unlock future emotes. Higher tiers obviously gets you things like deck doctoring, private games with us, being able to make your own content here on the channel. We do all kinds of stuff. But regardless, we're glad you're here and we hope you enjoy your time watching the stuff. That being said, guys, we had something happen over the past week and a half that we've never seen happen in Force of Will's history before. We got teasers, not spoilers, teasers.
I thought you were going to say Brad was in a tournament. But, also the teasers are a pretty big deal.
Yeah, the teasers for the next set. We saw the 6, we assume, tag Fallen Angels of the new set, the 7th. And so I think there's just a lot of things to talk about with those 6. I'm interested to hear your thoughts about the 6 and kind of what it means. But before we jump into that, I want to hear your thoughts about this fact that we're getting teasers. Like, this is brand new. It's always been wait until a month and a half before the set, which is usually past pre-order date, get the spoilers. But now we're well before pre-order date, and we know what 6 of the 7 rulers do in part. So, Ryan, as our guest for today, what's your thoughts on this kind of approach?
It really makes me feel like they're doing this with a very specific reason. Like, I don't know if there's some, like, the judgments are all 0 or something crazy, that there's like part of the card that they're hiding from us, or like what else the other thing? They haven't shown us judgments. They haven't shown us attributes on the rulers, so maybe they're all just like 5 color. They get 5 color energized or something crazy. I just feel like they're hiding something from us, but I'm also really excited to see what it is. So the teaser is, well, it's perfect. I'm sufficiently teased and very excited to see what else is coming.
Paul, what about you?
So the last time we got any sort of like teaser, there were more moving pictures. So consider me disappointed. I'm just kidding. I think this is a really good way of introducing new characters, because as far as I'm concerned, Force of Will has a lot of characters that are really cool, but if you're new to the game, you're like, who the heck is Pristia? Who a Stemma? A Borazuki? What? Who is? So like, this is a really good idea for just one, introducing these new characters, which I assume that we're gonna have these folks around for a while if we're getting introduced to them in this way. But I also think it's a really good, easy way to just sort of share the effects of these rulers around the internet in a way that isn't like, oh my god, that's so broken, I don't even know what these all mean. It's just like, these are the effects, and share them, please. I'm looking at Asmodeus right now. It's got 22 shares. That's pretty good for just one ruler being released.
Yeah.
And they're all really unique and very different. And so I think there's definitely like a communications pivot that they're doing here, which I really like.
Yeah.
Mike?
No, I'm super excited for these spoilers. I really like the fact that they waited until the spoilers that have, say, like, for example, we had all the rulers from last set spoiled in the order that they were spoiled, it would have been like, okay, what does this do? Okay, what does that do? Okay, what does that do? These are effects that are all very easy to identify with game mechanics. So people just coming in will be like, oh, sick, that's a really cool card and a really cool graphic. And look at that artwork. Oh my god, I love Bitey Girl. She's my favorite. So I just think that that's a really good thing. And I also really like the fact that they spoiled 6 of the 7.
Yeah.
So that we kind of have like the inner machinations like, who 7th is it gonna be Kaguya again? Maybe.
No, I don't think so.
I mean, if we are approaching the
Probably.
7th layer of hell, that's where Kaguya was made, right? I mean, we all played that format, so that makes sense to
We
me.
did all play that format. I played
Yeah,
Wanderer
that's-
in that format.
that's true.
Oh,
That was
that's
even
true,
worse.
you know.
So I agree with you all in the form of like, I think this is purely from a logistical side, like Paul said, like a communications pivot. I think this is actually huge, because up till now, some of the biggest things we've heard from the community as well as new players in the in-between sets is when we talk about pre-orders, people are like, yeah, but I don't know what's in it. You have no idea what's in it. But the problem is by the time that spoilers start, the pre-order date has usually passed. And so your distros who aren't like overbuying because they know that the orders will come in are short-sighted or shortcut, right? So we just don't have as much product available. But now, through revealing these 6 rulers, we can all pretty well speculate what kinds of things we're going to see in this set. Not exactly what, right? Not exactly what cards, not exactly what effects, but like you look at Beatrice and you can be like, okay, probably going to be stuff to deal with the graveyard. You look at Belial, you're like, okay, cool, probably a lot of token stuff. You look at Carlina, you're like, okay, probably really big dudes. You can get a sense of what the set is going to contain without even having to need to see cards. And that one gets your brain pumping, which gets you thinking about the set more often, which naturally drives you to want to order product because you're getting more hyped about it. It's like an internal like feedback loop of getting excited. But also, you don't have to ask as many questions because we know the name of the set. We know 6 of the rulers. There's still some mystery to it. And you can already start to think about what kind of deck you're going to want to play, what kind of cards you're going to want to get. And that naturally just pushes you in that way. It answers a lot of the questions without having to show too much. And like Ryan said, we don't know their judgments. We don't know their attribute costs. So they didn't give everything away. It truly is a teaser meant to just get you excited and wanting more. Which doing it this far before a set, I think has been huge. And I hope they keep it up because man, like the first one was spoiled and I was just like, okay, more please. Like, let's get some more. I need it. So yeah, I'm very excited. Also, Astronomy Dude, I mean, Asmodeus is pretty hot. So welcome. Hopefully you can play the game again. We're going to talk about him in just a second.
Demon of Lust has to be hot.
Yep.
Requirements.
For me personally, like I've kind of been very on the outskirts of Forcible for a while. This was like the first event I played this weekend, in a while, like probably since the Minneapolis event. And even then I wasn't like in the game. It was just like, hey Jeremy, I hear this deck is good. Can you get me the cards for it? I played the event and that's the last I thought about Forcible for a while. So like when these spoilers started dropping, I'm in the game now. I'm like, oh, it's great. This is awesome. All right, when's the set happening? Are these gonna be out by the next GP? And everyone's like, no, these are 3 months in advance. I'm just like, what am I supposed to do with my time? Like, I'm so excited for these cards already, and I have to wait like 2 more events before I get to see them. And I, like, you guys know I'm super hype on Bitey Lady. I thought she was super cool, and they spoiled the artwork, and then she dropped the actual effect. I'm like, oh, great, we get to like play big things, and the restrictions like are really interesting. And we've seen restrictions on rulers in the past where it's like specifically like IU Ragnarok is like the obvious one, but we've had Tree 2. Trying to think if there's any other restrictions. Grim, I guess.
Both the books.
Both the books. Yep.
All right. Well, those are. Here I was thinking all of them were great rulers, and then you mentioned the book, so that's not true. But I mean, when you narrow it down to just IU and Ragnarok and Tree 2, like those were all meta defining in their own way, right? So even though they had those restrictions, like their upsides were so good that they were all like super good decks. So when I see these, it's like, okay, I know Force of Will knows how to make restrictions like actually good. We don't have another Brad on our hands where it's just like, this was a cool concept and then you messed it up because there's no win condition. Like these could be really all on their own right, meta defining, and they're all tagged. So we already know they're at least going to be somewhat broken out the gate. So yeah, I'm just beyond excited, and I'm so upset that it's early because I have to wait so long to see what they all do.
It's the ups and downs, but it keeps you coming back for more, right? It's the
It does.
okay, what's next? I need more. So speaking of, enough talk. Let's talk about our first one here. We have Asmodeus. So tag ruler again. So you could use, presumably you can tag them with the other 5 from this set. This is our good boy Lust. You must have exactly 60 cards in your deck as the game starts. You may not have this card in your side deck. So Asmodeus, you stick with him, you're good. You have to have him at all times. Tap effect of banish a non-J ruler entity. He gets 4 +1/+1 counters on himself, and RFGs the top 2 cards of his deck from the game. God's Art is Lust. Remove the top 7 cards from the game. Put X +1/+1 counters for each J/Resonator you control, where X is the number of different names among cards you removed this way. So, couple things to note about this guy is that this guy follows the most similar formula, and in my opinion, he's probably the only one who follows really the most similar formula to the 6 Sages. In terms of some kind of thing that boosts your boosts your other J ruler, some kind of tap effect, some kind of start the game effect. Right?
Can we also talk about the fact that, like, clearly they made it Lust because it rewards you for having a big deck?
I often think that it's almost kind of like the restrictions are almost a punishment related to their sin, right? So Lust is like you're lusting after something, so he has to have a larger deck, meaning that it's harder for you to get the thing that you're lusting after. So it's like a nice little reversal there, which we'll see thematically.
A little better, but
I mean, I'm keeping it PG. I'm keeping it PG. So
that's fair. That's very fair.
That's my thought there.
I mean, you're gonna say that all again. I'm still on what Mike said. You're gonna say that all again. Okay, take 2.
It was such a bad joke.
Yeah, it was very, very bad. So
I blacked out. You know,
what are our thoughts about this guy, just in general, like from an approach? Ryan, what do you think?
I am trying to understand what his deck is going to look like, right? When you look at Carlina, you're like, okay, my stuff is going to cost a lot of mana, and I'm only going to have to play 1 card a turn. I got that. You know, the one that says I have less life just like says I buff tokens or give tokens Bane. It's like, okay, we're going to get tokens for it. When I look at Asmodeus, I'm like, what is going on here? He wants to banish things to put +1/+1 counters on himself. So, like, what does he want to banish? What is that going to look like? And then his God's Art wants you to have cards with different names in your 60-card deck. And then he wants to buff your entire board, which I assume is going to include himself in some way. But it's like, this is on his ruler side. So his tap ability is putting +4/+1 counters on himself. And his God Art is putting +1/+1 counters on everything else. And it like wants you to have a wide board, but also wants you to have different card names in your 60. Like, what is his support going to look like? I just can't pin it down at all. Even like I'm probably gonna see a support and be like, oh duh. But like just looking at this card by itself, I have no idea what's going on at all.
Yeah, it's very unique to me in the sense that like, yeah, I can only imagine that it's going to be wanting to be able to like play cards from the RFG. Or like if it's milled, do X. If it's milled, put it into play. That kind of stuff. To like where it's not necessarily that like the sacking is like you're getting a benefit for sacking the thing. It's more of like you have something to sack so that you can like use the deck more. It almost feels very similar to Tree 2 without being so clearly up to this point labeled in terms of like what that support's going to look like. When Tree 2 was spoiled, he told you Dark Arla, Dark Melgus, Dark Rezard, right? But it feels very much in that same vein of like you're going to want to try to mill your own stuff and you're going to get value off of that. But we got to see how exactly that plays out because you can still take damage unlike Tree 2.
The realest thing that I want to say about Asmodeus is that I don't know, I've been playing with Mikage a little bit recently, trying to like kind of mess around with it, feel it out a little bit. I like Dracula or Alucard, Dracula, whatever. I like him as a card a lot, but I always feel terrible because I'm sacking him during my own turn, and then he's just left out to rot. This card lets you sack him during your turn, put counters on things, and then rewards you for having a board full of stuff by having that God Shard. So like I don't know, this feels like there's some kind of sticky resonator deck that could be made out of him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Better Mikage.
Everything's better.
I also
Mikage.
like the idea, like when you play Mikage, everything's better Mikage, including Brad. The idea of just like swinging in, dodging, removal. I wonder if we're gonna get support similar to the goddesses with this ruler. Dark goddesses.
Well, I want to play the goddesses.
I mean, you also could just naturally play goddesses in this deck.
Wanted to be. Yeah,
because they're still in rotation.
I don't know if Asmodeus is going to be amazing unless we get a good support.
Yeah,
they're
I
still
agree.
Currently in rotation, but they won't be for long.
Yeah, he's the one ruler.
But yeah, that support really works with him really well.
Yeah, he's the one ruler that I look at and kind of like Ryan said, like I don't see a clear path for him. He is the least like identity driven from what we've seen. So we really need to see more of what he has to offer first, I think. Still cool, but
to your point earlier, you were saying like Dante is the one ruler that you can kind of attach with anyone, and then you get to not have a secondary bad side. If what you're saying is true, where like maybe he does just want to focus on like the remove from play self mill stuff, well, Dante does not play well with that. So then that means that on top of your 60 card deck, you have to also incur another downside, or just not our Dante, I guess.
Well, that's not technically true because I'll put over to Dante here real quick. That's not technically true because if things trigger, it's kind of like it's like the Adam ruling of like if it's milled from deck to grave, RFG it'll probably still trigger regardless of Dante. Anyway, speaking of Dante, we have Tag Ruler Dante. Literally all he has is God's Art Sloth. He a lazy boy for 0. This card gains in all removed areas at all graveyards. Cards in all graveyards and all removed from game areas lose all abilities. So 2 things to note about this before we get into kind of what we think about this guy. First off, loses creates a timestamp. So if something would gain an ability after this resolves, it will successfully gain it. Rip heart to heart talk being still playable even after this guy resolves. So like good for Violet essentially. Second, and then the second thing is again like his downside is that he's lazy, so he just doesn't provide you much. So that's like the neg. It can turn into a positive, like Ryan was saying. We talked about before the podcast of if you want to lean really heavily into just one of the ruler's support packages, you can build a deck with Dante as your second tag ruler so that you still have access to a second ruler because that does provide you with some good advantage. But like you don't have to also incur a second negative. So that's just something to consider. Thoughts on our lazy boy Dante? Mike, you're going to go first.
I think this is
I get to go first. First of all, I loved him in the Devil May Cry series.
Going first.
I loved him in the Burning Abyss deck. But you know, otherwise, I hate that both of you just kind of did that. But no, I really like the fact that he's just like a pure like hate ruler, and the fact that you're talking about timestamps. Like obviously, he's not giving like a full on like neg forever. Like you can't even like. You know, it's not like lose and cannot gain abilities. It's just they lose them, and then you have the timestamp right over it, which is like.
So it stops things. Right. It stops things like Sigurd because those technically aren't gaining those abilities. They're just a continuous ability that card always has, and so like it stops stuff like that or things that have remnant. Like it'll stop that. But a card that says like a heart to heart is the perfect example of like as this card resolves, it gains this in the RFG. That bypasses the timestamp of Dante, so you still get that. So like very still applicable. There just are like niche situations where it's gonna come up.
Hurts Dracula because it goes into the grave and then they say, and then he's gone forever. My Dracula Asmodeus strategy is ruined.
Gone. It's ruined.
Mikage is no longer tier 0. I'm sorry, Toby.
Mikage's doomed.
Paul, what do you got for us?
I was gonna say this is the one ruler where I'm like, it's either gonna be side decked a lot, or if you do play it, this is the ruler that is just say, okay, gods are at the beginning of the game because there's no text saying this is only to the end of the turn, so you just to the end of the game, cards in removed areas and in graveyards, just no effects. Cool. I'm gonna call stones with this now. I feel like this is the side deck ruler though. Personally, unless we have the flip side and it's like, oh, I'm a 40/40 with flying and barrier, and you can't do anything.
That's
And
terrible.
also, Mike overruled. This is definitely Dante from the Divine Comedy. Dante from the Hobbit.
He said Atomic Bahamut. It's disguised to Bahamut.
This is Atomic Bahamut. This is Gollum from Lord of the Rings. Pass.
Ryan, what about you?
Yeah, I think this is the one where this teaser format has really just kept us on the edge of our seats, because this can't be all he's packing. I feel like his J ruler side has to have something, and like you said, he is the sloth ruler, so he is the lazy one. So maybe he's got some hefty judgment costs, and then like once he pays for his sins and stops being lazy, and like we see his flip side, maybe that's where this card really packs a punch, and we get to see what it's trying to do. But yeah, for now, like I think. Like, I don't know what the support's going to look like. He's just a hate bear for side deck stuff, so we'll have to see what his other side actually does. But he is hot. He's
I love how Ryan's like, I love how Ryan's like, Dante's packing when clearly we know that this is packing. But anyway, continuing on.
Oh my gosh. Okay, anyway, next up we have, I believe, next up was Beatrice was revealed. So we have Beatrice. If you would draw... If it was this demo, we'll go back to her. But we're going to Beatrice. I already have her pulled up.
So this is how we get 10 more minutes out of Derek watching. We skip a stemma, and he's like, "I have to see it."
Yep. So she has the starting game modifier effect of if you would draw a starting hand, you draw your starting hand -1. Your maximum hand size is decreased by 1 until the end of game instead. So starting with 4 cards in hand. God's Art for Greed. If you have no cards in your hand, draw 2 cards. And she has the null mechanic of at the end of your turn, which is when you would want to have null turn on, draw a card. My first thoughts about this is that even just looking at Beatrice, this makes me feel like we've now understood what the null mechanic needed to be. Because when Null was first released with Scarlet, it was just text that was slapped on cards. It didn't really have like an idea of what Null was actually as a deck. It was just like, what if we just put extra card text on things that happen sometimes when you have no hand? And like to me, when I look at Beatrice, I go, oh, this is a Null deck. Like we're going to actually be able to have a deck that functions around the idea of Null. And that to me is very exciting because it's a fun mechanic.
Yeah.
Ryan, what are your thoughts? I'm controlling the order today.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty hype on her. I thought she was really cool. I think there's a lot of cool things you can do with a ruler like Beatrice. I mean, just in a perfect world, you actually don't mind the downside because you want to start drawing an extra 2 cards every turn. Like you're gonna have, I mean, Force Will right now is so fast paced. You're playing cards that cost 1 or 2 mana. If you're playing a card that costs 3 mana, you're pulling it out with a card that costs 2 mana. You're never really doing that much. So it's really easy to run out of cards quickly. The deck that actually played in the GP was running 4 of the Flute that just says when you're at 0 cards in hand, draw 4 cards, because I think that card's broken. And now this ruler comes out and it's like, hey, you have that on your ruler. And I'm like, oh, all right, this is exactly what I want to be doing. I want to just throw. And a lot of the stuff in the format that is interactive is either 1-for-1 or -1. There's not a lot of stuff that like actually gains you card advantage outside of like Melfi, which is like you get a 2/2 for free and you draw a card, but like Lycion is even like a -1 because it's coming down on the board. It's great tempo, but in terms of advantage, it's not really generating you anything. Look at Necronomicon Barrier, one of the best answers in the format. They still keep their card that they played, but they don't get an enter ability, so you're just kind of throwing away a card. So you can really run out of cards very easily when you're playing a control strategy, and then this just lets you play control and then reload, and then play control and then reload, and I think it's super cool. I'm really hyped for it.
Paul, what about you?
Yeah, everything that Ryan Miles said, and this is obviously Beatrice from the Burning Abyss deck. Obviously, no other references. Mike.
Oh wow, now Paul's controlling the order. I see. Anyway,
yeah.
No, I really like Beatrice as a card. Honestly, I think that starting with a smaller opening hand is a legitimately huge downside in this game right now. Like Fitzing is good because she's like the exact opposite of a tag ruler of this ruler, where instead of seeing 8 cards out of your deck, you see 20. But what can you do with that? But I do agree with the fact that she just kind of reloads after you've dumped your whole hand out doing your plays. But I think another really big factor to her is that we've seen so far we've seen, obviously, Asmodeus has a tap ability. We're going to see other rulers down the road with tap abilities that do things. None of her abilities are tap abilities, so she's free to call Stone or Judgment. So I think that's a really big thing when you're thinking about which ones you're going to pair up with one another.
Yeah.
I don't know what the optimal one's going to be, but she's going to be a really, really strong contender for the rulers that just want to tap themselves down to get something.
And the other thing is just like these rulers. I mean, we've already talked about 3 of them, right? We're going to talk about 6. These feel so much more unique and flavorful and identity driven than the 6 sages, right?
Oh,
so
yeah,
like
for sure.
the thing that we've talked about it before of like the problem with the 6 sages in terms of design space outside of the like competitive elements of it, because that's a whole different conversation, is that the identity of Magic Stone War, like the 6 sages are very bland in terms of like an identity of what they do as a ruler. It's all front loaded to what their start of game effects are, and then the set itself just doesn't set up those rulers to have very much uniqueness or flavor to them. This like is far and above the opposite of that. These are so flavorful, they're so very clearly unique and differed, and like you're going to be playing very different decks based on your combination of them. And to me, that is really exciting. And so like everything that you guys have said in terms of especially what Ryan has said about Force of Will has done a pretty good job of like finding ways to play through downsides. And so we haven't had that in a while, so I'm excited to see what that looks like in this environment too. Also, just like, again, similar to the idea, like I said before, just like bring us back an actual null deck, please, and designed it well so that like if you have null, it's not draw a card on your turn to make it like, bad in the sense of like I have another card to try to get rid of. It's have a card at the end of your turn after you've done all your null stuff, which to me is like, great, let's do it. I like it a lot. Now we'll go on to Derek's favorite, who we have, Stemma. She has the starting text of, "You cannot win the game. Your opponent cannot lose the game." And then it says, whenever an entity your opponent controls is put into a graveyard from the field, choose 1. This ability triggers only once per turn. So either player's turn. So there's a little bit of concern. And then produces red or black or draw a card. And then has the god art of Envy. Search your deck for a card named Inferno, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle your deck. So, this ruler to me, literally, my understanding of her in terms of whether I like her or not is going to come down to how do we get rid of that first line of text.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't form an opinion on her because I don't know how she's getting rid of that text line yet. So I don't really have much more to say other than that.
Yeah, I have to imagine it's got something to do with this Inferno that we're god arting for. But looking at the other part, like the effect of killing your opponent's stuff and getting, an ability trigger, I think that's pretty cool. Also sets up for a kind of control kind of deck, and there's a lot of things they can do with that, so it's really hard to say what that part of the ability is going to look like in terms of support. But yeah, you cannot lose the game, or you cannot win, your opponent can't lose. Like that's, I mean, you got to do something about that. Whether it's Judgmenting or this Inferno card, it's got to be one of the two in my mind. So that's really cool and very interesting ruler.
Yeah.
And I will say that this might be a ruler, because in my mind it is either going to be the Judgment side doesn't have that text, or the Inferno gets rid of it, or something like that. So this might be like almost like Dante, right, where it is the no downside ruler. Obviously, that first line is a downside, but if it has its own built-in way to get rid of that downside, then this might just be you're playing this Beatrice deck and you're just throwing 1-mana removal spells at all of your opponent's stuff and then drawing cards on your opponent's turn. Like that's a synergy you can have right there, where you're just reloading your hand on your opponent's turn, dumping it on your turn, and then drawing back to 2 cards, and then firing off removal spells and drawing more cards, and just that's kind of how the cycle goes. As long as the stem has a built-in way to beat that downside, then I think she could be really, really.
Yeah, I agree. Paul?
So there's another Divine Comedy reference in this card.
Thank you. Thank you
That's
for
what I
the
got.
thank
But
you for
I
the
was
history
gonna say,
lesson.
the cantrip effect on the cantrip effect on its own is probably the best line of text on this card outside of the will production. I like the idea of playing literally anything to get rid of my opponent's card. I think specifically of the Mysteries of Grus Ballesta feels really, really good with this card. Being able to draw a card and go up and just get a card immediately back. So on its own, it's pretty good. Pairing it with Beatrice is, I mean, that's spice. Mike, do you want to go?
So the first thing about this card is that Ryan group chat where we thought to ourselves, if your opponent can't lose the game, does that all?
Once again,
His-
Mike
the
tries to
secret
make.
is too powerful. You guys can't hear about it. I DDoSed him immediately.
They don't want us. They don't want to know the secrets.
So say what you were gonna say, Mike.
I was gonna be dumb, just so
Oh,
you
okay.
know.
I mean, I know it's gonna be
dumb,
but-
Okay, yeah.
It's super dumb. So Ryan and I first thought, like, well, okay, so I posed this question in this group chat featuring Charlie and Brandon Bremont. So I'm like, okay, there are judges here to listen to me ramble. I said, if your opponent can't lose the game, that's them losing the game. So, like, can we just prison them forever if we just don't have a win con and just go into time?
If your opponent can't
So
concede,
Ryan and I started formulating some ideas.
yeah.
But you can concede for any reason for any time, and that's not considered a loss of the game. It's like, yeah, it's very weird. You can.
Yeah, that's the no fun
I
answer.
know.
But the hypothetical here is that you could play without a win condition, and just play Force of Will for the entirety of the round, and then like at the very
The entirety
last
of the
minute,
tournament, one round, like 7 hours,
no,
make everybody miserable. Your opponent cannot concede. If your opponent passes out from hunger, they can't lose because of that.
it got ridiculous. But
That's
yeah, if there's
hilarious.
winning in time and conceding are
CR
like
question.
But,
I just had a CR question. So if your opponent decks out, did they lose?
Yeah, no, they can't lose that way.
Unless
They can't lose that
yeah,
way.
that's an
they
in-game.
can't
Yeah,
lose that way.
it's like a floor rules versus like comprehensive rules.
You can
like,
you can
conceding
still
is a,
conceding
the floor rules
isn't
kind of question.
anything that's like floor rules, so like losing to sudden
Unfortunate.
death in game one, or stuff like that. Like those will technically still apply. And you can always concede for any reason, and that's not considered like losing. That's like a forfeit. So like it's different. It's
Sure.
very weird. Don't be
I'm gonna have
bad.
my own-
Don't be mean.
I'm gonna-
Anything fun.
I'm
you
gonna
can
have
think
my
about
own
is
custom
like this.
format.
Stop.
I'm gonna
Okay,
have
we have
my
more
own-
rulers to talk
You
about.
already
Mike,
have.
stop. Mike, stop.
Hold on.
Really?
One thing I do want
What?
to say here is with like, specifically the Estema Beatrice, I really think that Tsuya, Curse of Ragnarok is like
Tsuya.
the coolest card I could put in that combination, right? Because when you play it, your opponent banishes an entity, and Estema triggers says produce mana or draw a card, whatever your heart desires. And the flip side of Ragnarok, the alternate side, can just sit in your graveyard, not eating up your hand space and getting in the way of your null, and then you like get to draw a card at the end of turn. You have your 2 cards, and you still have a Curse of Ragnarok in your graveyard to get negated by Dante, or you should just have more resources to be able to do things with. So I think that's like already kind of the gears are turning, but I'm excited to see what else they kind of do.
Yeah, for sure. It really does. Like I said, it comes down to. I like what you said there. Is that like she's potentially the no downside ruler based on how we get rid of that natural line of text? Because we talked about before about. Charlie talked about this very, very well, is that Force of Will right now, the most important things in Force of Will are going card positive and mana positive. And Estema just naturally on her front side says like you could at least once a turn get to go card or mana positive. Like 1-for-1 removal spells now become a positive because I'm drawing a card or I'm producing the will to recover the will that I just spent on the one card. And so like that existing but not like every single time, right? That like limited kind of increase is something that's nice to see. And does kind of give me credence to, if we can get rid of that first line of text pretty easily, Estema is probably going to be a ruler you're going to see in a competitive environment. But really, we just got to see what that end game win con is. Like, that's just, we got to see what that is. Next up, we have Belial, who is the anti-white lady whose name I can't remember, Amarius. If you would set your starting life, set it to that much minus 2,000 instead. Resonator tokens you control gain +2/+2 in Bane. Fallen, which is now the new keyword, and they defined it for us nicely. You can this card gains the following text until end of turn if a God's Art you controlled was resolved this turn. You cannot lose the game. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to you. God's Art is Pride. Draw a card. Again, to talk about the reversal, right? He's prideful. He doesn't think he can lose. The curse of that is that he is the easiest to kill. In terms of you start with like the flavor of the like connection from their like downside to their God's Art and so good. But I mean, like Derek, you already have a invite, so like I wouldn't be surprised to just see you play here without a win con in every GP at this point. But Belial to me is a little bit better than Asmodeus in terms of figuring out how he's going to play. It makes me think he's potentially going to be very God's Art heavy. Like his resonators might have God's Arts to kind of fuel keeping him alive. He naturally has 2 turns of life. Because you're going to have 2 God's Arts right off the bat. He could very clearly be an aggressive token deck. There's like he has more definition to him from Asmodeus, but also partly still leaves me with a lot of questions. Mike, why don't you start us off this time?
Jeremy.
Okay, I can
anyway.
skip you if you would like to be skipped. I mean, like...
No, Belial's really cool, honestly. I think that it's one of those rulers that I don't really think has like a purpose from what I can see immediately. Like setting yourself to half-life is a pretty decent sized downside. Although, you know, if you're playing against Violet, the difference between 4,000 and 0 is just kind of like nothing. But I think the biggest thing with him is the fact that like the God's Art just being a one-time draw card is like really solid. Like really solid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a ruler in New Frontiers right now that like starts the game and you draw a card, and she's pretty broken, I think. So yeah, drawing cards is pretty good. I'll agree with that.
Yeah, seems good.
Yeah, so this 2000 seems really bad to me, and that's my gut instinct, especially when you look at red decks and how just quickly they go through 2000 life. And how they can do it both on their turn and then on your turn, and there's just a lot of damage that can come at you. But like the God's Art thing, like you're saying, he has his own God's Art. We've got God's Arts on a couple of the other rulers, which is pretty cool. And when you can just like the not lose the game part is nice, but the prevent all damage part is actually really important. And that's like when you think about this kind of like not die effect, a lot of people who play card games go back to Ice Block from Hearthstone. And how do you beat that card? You put them to 1 life, and then you pop it, and then you kill them next turn. But here, it's like, oh, you're 2,000? I'm going to try and put you to, 400 life. And you're like, I just won't take 16. And also, I'm not going to lose the game this turn. You can't, do something else after I've already prevented that damage that you're trying to hit me with, So you really do get 2 free turns of just, not taking that damage. And I think that's going to be one of the more important ways to use that card. I think you're still probably going to lose to aggressive red decks, but that you can side this ruler out against them and be fine. Like if you're really feeling frisky, maybe you side out Belial and your other fallen angel and just go into Almirius and say, now what do you do? But
2 tag rulers into 2 tag rulers.
Yeah, you just
if they let us do that, oh my gosh, that opens up some very significant potential play lines.
My real question here is an epic stories. I know you can't have.
We're not going to talk about it.
Okay.
I don't want to talk about it right now.
All right, but yeah.
So I think to your credit, we're in a format, and I think we saw it this past GP. We're in a format that's shifted from. We're in a format that's shifted from end phase to main phase. And I say that in the perspective of like, if we looked at the Melfi Lycion deck, right? Like it actually is doing a bunch of stuff during its own main phase, and then sure, the kill is like trying to do like the Priscia combo during your turn kind of thing, but then it's actually like trying to apply pressure during its own turn, right? So when you have a ruler, when you have a format like that, like Violet is also the same way, right? She tries to atomic turbulence you during her upkeep. All of her pressure is generated during her turn, like that kind of stuff. When you have a ruler that just says, hey, for 2 of your turns in this game, bursty combo deck, I'm just going to say that you just can't hit me or that I can't lose. That, to me, makes me curious about Belial, especially based on how many potential God's Arts he gets, because if you look at not so much Violet because she replenishes so easily, but if you look at the Melfi Lycion decks, the times that they lost or really struggled was when they tried to pop off, didn't pull it off, and then got punished because they're gassed out immediately. So now we have a ruler in darkness, the easiest board wipe color, by the way, if Belial is black, which we can assume, to tell those bursty pop-off decks, hey, you're just going to gas out. I don't even have to worry about drawing a card and you're going to gas out. That to me is interesting, and I'd be I want to see how that impacts playlines potentially. That's the only thing that makes me like Belial as of now. But it is certainly something I think to consider. Paul, any thoughts before we move on to our last one?
Yeah, I got a few. So that first line of text reminds me a lot of Dark Elves and how they would get effects based on where your life was at. So I'm thinking maybe the support will go in that direction. But then I'm also looking at the tokens, and I'm like, okay, tokens get +2/+2 in Bane. Do I have a way of generating tokens and then not having those tokens die easily? I don't want to just have to suicide into things or just attack through. I want to actually have those tokens be integral to things. The God's Art in and of itself, if it wasn't attached to the Fallen keyword, would probably be very underwhelming to me. But then I remembered we also have a tradition in this game where you can sometimes reset God's Arts. And then, I was thinking about Fish Drive, and I was like, how do we get...
Let's get 6/1/1s with Bane.
6/3/3s with Bane. Thank you very much.
Let's do it.
That's just casually 18
Drop
damage
Thunder.
for 1, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, that's not nothing.
Yeah.
Let's go, Burning Rabbit Dash. Come on, boys.
Let's go. So I do.
Dash.
I do want to quickly jump over to Carlina because I know Ryan has to go, and I want him to be able to talk about his bitey lady. So Carlina says you can only play one will per turn. You can only play one spell per turn. You tap, produce 2 will in any combination of attributes, and then God's Art Gluttony. Spells you control with total cost 4 or more cannot be canceled until the end of turn. Cough, cough. The Welser Resonator gets around that. Whenever a card with total cost 4 or more enters the field under your control, draw 2 cards. It has been ruled as of this moment that second sentence is permanent.
Ooh.
So that's important to know. The unless otherwise specified is that whenever is the otherwise specified, which means whenever for the rest of the game. So keep that in mind. And then again, I do want Ryan to be able to talk about his opinions on Bitey Lady. So Ryan, go for it.
Yeah, so the main thing here, when I see 1 card per turn, it's all right, that's only 1 card per turn, but I'm going to have a lot of mana. So what else can I do with mana? So the things I'm looking for from her support are going to be inheritance type effects. I want them to reprint all the giants, especially Trow, my homie. Bring him back. Give him back to me. And mana sinks. So if we have some resonators that can be played and then we have extra mana, we can use that while they're on the field to do something. It's really just a matter of and then I really want things to do with my mana that aren't just playing cards, but also the God's Art Gluttony, where it's just your stuff can't be canceled, which your biggest enemy is Welser, but whatever, can't beat that, but you'll beat the other 6 ages, or the other fallen angels, I guess. And then, drawing 2 cards every time you play something with 4 or more. Sign me up. Absolutely. I'm going to inheritance my giant for 3, then I'll play 1 for 7 and draw 2 cards. I'm all about it.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. This to me is she has me the most excited because she is going to be bringing back something that has always felt good in FOW, but we've never been able to, for the past 2 years has really only been able to do at the casual level, which is stick 4 drops, stick 5 drops, because she's just naturally going to be letting you get to that point very early, at which point that you have the counters, you have things like that, and sign me up for dropping 5 drops. Yep. I'm in. Let's do it. Even if
Watch me hit a 6 Sage Stone on turn 1 and then coin out a Griffin. That's the dream. That's
I
what
mean, like,
wanna
yeah,
do.
absolutely, man.
All I want to do is if I do that one time, then I'm like, oof,
Ooh.
all right. Pointy Teeth Lady has fulfilled all of my dreams at that point. I'm good.
Yeah, for sure. Paul, what about you? What are your thoughts on Bitey Teeth Lady?
I mean, I was gonna say 6 Sage Stone, like being able to just drop a 5-drop on turn 1 for just here you go, and your opponent can't do anything unless they have the coin. That just feels really, really, really solid. And I just want to play big boys. This is the big boys ruler, and you can tell it's the gluttony ruler because she's holding a fork and knife.
I think I'm gonna have to.
Oh yeah, and the teeth.
I think I'm gonna have to get Streamlabs sound cue for whenever we put Carlina on stream. That as soon as someone plays a Carlina, it's like the Gura big boy sound effect just every single time. Yeah, it's gonna be crazy.
So,
Mike, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, go ahead and do Mike first.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Anyway, no, I adore the hell out of Carlina. First of all, like this is like one of my favorite design rulers I've seen in the past, like probably like the past year. I don't know, man. Like I'm a sucker for big things because I love being a Johnny in this game. I'm a sucker for wheel production. I'm a sucker for big, drawbacks with payoffs. But also, it's Ryan Miles can tell you if it's got quick cast, it's a good card. And the fact that she says one spell per turn, not one spell during both players' turns, means hey, you get 2 spells a turn if you're playing a good deck, and that's the magic of her. And that's where all this is going to come into play. This is just going to be like draw cards, produce wills. So I'm going to find whatever I can, like things that cost 4 that come with like their own inherent discounts too. Like there's so much that you could do with her. It's so
it does
cool.
say total cost 4 or more, so you could just play a Wyvern and draw 2 cards and feel really good about it if you somehow created tokens without playing a card. I don't know how, but maybe we'll get something, right? But yeah, so all the cool Energize 6 Sage Stone gimmicks aside, you just have turn 1, battle comes to an end, and then. So yeah, you lose to Welser, but if against Violet, against Likey on decks, you've got turn 1, battle comes to an end.
You don't necessarily, based on what supports they have, like if you're talking about the idea of, like you said, we have inheritance effects, it feels very much to me like she's being set up to be designed so she has a lot of like inherent, like we know you're only playing one thing a turn, we're going to give you the option, like the resources you need to be able to stick it like around her restriction. And like battle comes to an end against certain decks is just like absolutely backbreaking.
Now Matchstick decks are totally dead.
Yeah. But
that
even
was a concern. Good call, Mike.
But even like, the fact that she can, if she wants to play a control route against like a Violet, right? She can just play like 4 copies or like sideboard in suddenly 3 more copies of brain turn on.
That one.
Flames of the Outer World. There we go. And just like have it. She just has the ability to play Flames of the Outer World. Like you think of how many answers we have that like they're very good cards. But like the things that kind of been holding them back is the fact that you have to ramp into them, which makes them not as efficient answers in a fast format. And Carlina says like, no, I can play those. It's fine. And it's like that to me gets me very excited too. I just want
one thing I want for this besides inheritance are big boys that actually stick. Because the only thing that's coming to my head right now is probably something with barrier like Motoko
like
or something with Eternal. So that it can't be removed, like Big Chungus, stuff like the big boy, so that can't get removed from the field very easily. So I'm hoping Carlina gives us something to that degree. Otherwise, I'm like cheating out the behemoth before it got corrupted. Just like removing 2 things.
Yeah,
that'd be super fun.
Astronomy dude, they're called tag rulers because you get to use 2 combined together if they share the same tag. So these will probably be fallen angels, so we can imagine. So they'll be tag fallen angels, so you can combine them together. Or is it Magic Stone where they had tag 6 sages, so you could combine 2 of the 6 sages together. You can't combine a 6 sage and a fallen angel. you can combine.
Watch Forza will just goon all of us and say, nope, these are all 6 ages too, have fun. And we're just like, what do we do?
Start with Almerius
They were
and
the
let's do
first
Almerius,
Belial.
and Belial.
Yeah.
I'm gonna replace it to $2,000, and then I'm gonna add $3,000. So my starting life total is $5,000.
There we go.
There you go. Mooj Dart plus Beatrice. Like, my starting hand size is the
Ooh.
normal hand size.
I gain no benefits.
Hooray!
Oh my god.
Oh man, like I think the thing is, like, this is to me like the ending of the cluster, right? So this is the end of the cluster in the sense that we've really seen the design approach from this set kind of like loop back on itself. So like sets 1 and set 3 are very like parallel in the sense of they were designed with, we have these six rulers, or like 5 rulers, 6 rulers, and then like the set is very, very driven towards those. And then you have the tag set, which was like very open-minded and like mini pixels or whatever. And now set 2 and set 4 are very mirrored for each other as well. And like as a cluster, I really appreciate the design of this set, or like this cluster. I think that there's things that at the competitive level, I think that there are still always things that Force of Will can do better in terms of their set design. But in terms of like as the casual level, this cluster like has so much flavor and like creativity and uniqueness to it that to round out the cluster with this complete 180 in terms of like, now we have restrictions, something that Force of Will has done in the past, but it's been forever, and like creative design space in terms of mix and match your negatives and everything else is like just has me hyped.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to see what colors these guys are. I imagine they're probably all darkness, at least in some fashion, being fallen angels. So it'll
Wait, we're just gonna get 6 darkness rulers? That seems ridiculous.
unless it's some kind of dual color. Like, so if we're going off of visual cues, right?
Okay.
So like if we're going off of visual cues, it'd be like Beatrice looks very black blue. If we're looking at Astema, right? Probably black red based on her ability. Belial, I don't really maybe black white because of the link of like life and light, maybe. And then you have like Dante, who is lazy, so it's probably just black. And then Carlina, who's related to cancels and ramp. So I wonder if she's green. Like,
she's white. Come on, man.
Very clearly.
White is the ramp color now, don't you know?
Yeah.
They switched it.
So like, it's just there's so much flavor here, and they've done just enough with these teasers to make me excited about it, but also leaving me with so many questions that make me just like want to keep thinking about and talking about Force of Will. So like, kudos to I Spy for doing this. Like, spoilers probably aren't going to start for another month, and I'm like, why? I want it now.
So
what else?
I just want to know what their stones are going to do.
Yeah, that too. Like, what's going to happen there? But yeah, good stuff.
Your ruler is recovered. Rest it.
If your ruler is recovered, rest it.
Yeah, what if they get a downside stone? And it's like, oh wow, we could just opt not to play that. Okay.
Yeah, it's good. And then we don't know what the 7th is. I think we can probably assume, if we're again mirroring Magic Stone War 0, it's 6 tags and a non-tag. So there's a couple of ideas, whether it be like the 7th Fallen Angel or some kind of like 7th hero coming into play. We'll have to see. But
Booster.
yeah,
It's Kaguya. It's just Kaguya. I've already
It's
called
literally
it.
just Kaguya.
it's just Kaguya.
Kaguya.
It's just Kaguya. So
She just
Kaguya
has
was
an
loose
activated
the whole
ability
time.
on her ruler side that says "Pay green white cancel target spell," and it's just a ruler ability. That's what she does.
doesn't have a judgment. She doesn't have a judgment. She's just that.
No,
Like,
no, she judgments
just
into
Seal.
the
It's a topic
the
of-
It's
old.
just Seal.
You remember Kaguya 3 from Time Spinning Witch? She judgments into that for 5.
oh, the like reset the game.
Yeah, it's gonna be that. Yep,
Yeah.
they just brought that card back. Don't worry.
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
seen,
yeah.
I've seen the spoilers, guys. Trust
No,
me.
she's just gonna flip. She's gonna flip into the Kaguya. Which one was it from? Like NPR.
It's a brand.
She's
Oh,
just
God.
in the bread.
Yeah, no bet. No, thank you. But that's gonna be it for us for tonight. Thank you all so much. We have like 30 people watching with us tonight, engaging in the conversation. If you like what we did, consider clicking that join button down below, as well as giving us a like, a comment, and a subscribe to be watching for all of the stuff that we're gonna be doing. We're gonna be doing a Foul Wednesday finale this week. with myself and Paul and Josh Mostart, because it's most likely going to be us being able to go back to locals, at which point we'll have feature matches back with commentary, deck profile videos, and then we'll be doing casual Wednesday night Foul Wednesday streams just from my phone, so you won't get like as much discussion. It'll just be putting a camera on at locals. So it'll be a little bit different, but we're going to throw out Foul Wednesday with a bang this Wednesday, so stay tuned for that. And thank you all so much for watching, and I've always been joined by Ryan Miles. Good to have you back, my friend. Paul Reisman.
It's been a blast.
You were here for Force of Wind. Now it's Force of Dark.
Great. I'm in it for it. And Mike Grants.
fowtcg, everyone.
So until next time,
Godspeed.
class dismissed. Have a good night, everybody.